Hello, my name is Marianne, and this is the story of my romance with Warren. I'm 68 years old, have 2 grandchildren, a balcony full of ferns, and up until recently, a backache that followed me like a silent shadow. But if you think I'm only going to talk about physical pain, you're mistaken. Because what hurt the most wasn't my body, it was my soul. It was the absence of touch, of presence, of conversation that wasn't just about lab tests or prescription refills. It was the loneliness after Howard, my partner of nearly 40 years, passed away. When he left, I kept going, but I didn't live. I did what needed to be done. I retired, took care of the kids and grandkids, organized the drawers, and even painted the kitchen yellow, trying to trick time. But deep down, I felt like a radio off frequency, turned on, but without music. The back pain crept in quietly, like it didn't want to bother me. At first, I thought it was just age. "That's how it goes, Mrs. Marianne," the doctor said with a tired smile. But I knew it wasn't just that. It felt like my body was trying to tell me something I refused to hear, that it was still here, that it still wanted to feel. Am I still capable of being moved? I asked myself one night, while rubbing ointment on my back with trembling fingers. It was strange to admit it, but I missed something I couldn't even name. It wasn't sex. It was presence. It was warmth. It was being seen again, as a woman, as someone who still pulses. My friends call me resilient. I say I'm stubborn. I insisted on continuing even when I didn't know where I was going. And it was because of that stubbornness, or maybe a flicker of hope, that one day, after a sleepless night and a spasm that nearly knocked me to the floor in the bathroom, I decided to look for a massage therapist. Not out of vanity, out of necessity. I just wanted to ease the pain, to walk in the park again without that sharp reminder with every step that I was getting old. But what scared me the most wasn't aging. It was the possibility of spending the rest of my days without ever feeling butterflies in my stomach again. That silly anticipation of someone calling, or the warmth of a hand resting on your back just out of affection. I thought those things belonged only to the young. But back then, I didn't know that the body has memory, and mine, no matter how silent, still remembered what it felt like to be touched with tenderness. This is just the first part of my story. A story that begins with pain, but led me to rediscover something I thought I'd lost. The ability to feel, to desire, to be desired. Because at 68, I learned that the heart doesn't have an expiration date, and even in silence, it keeps waiting for a new beginning. I still remember the sound of the glass door opening, the light scent of lavender mixed with eucalyptus, and the cozy silence of that softly lit room, touched by a golden glow. It was in that peaceful space that I met Warren. His name was printed in small letters on the card I got at my doctor's office, along with the recommendation, "He's very good, he'll help you." I wasn't expecting anything beyond a little relief for my back. I showed up with a tense body and an even more tense soul. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Marianne," he asked, with a voice that was firm but kind. I nodded with a restrained smile. He looked me in the eyes with respect, and I confess, that was already more than I'd received in a long time. Warren must have been in his early 60s, well-groomed gray hair, large but gentle hands, and a way of moving that radiated calm. Before I go on, if this beginning has already touched your heart, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will move you even more. The room was simple, but there was something about it that made me want to stay. Maybe it was the soft instrumental music, or the warm light of the lamp, or maybe, and most likely, it was him. "You can lie on your side if that's more comfortable," he said, concerned. "The touch is always respectful, and within your comfort." It felt strange to lie down there. Me, used to being strong, to doing everything myself, now relying on a stranger's touch. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. His hands began to work gently, and in that silence, something in me started to yield. The pain was still there, of course, but for the first time in a long time, I felt I wasn't alone with it. It was as if he were saying, without words, "I'm here. You don't have to endure everything by yourself. Let me know if anything bothers you, all right?" he asked delicately. I just nodded. I couldn't remember the last time someone asked me that with such sincerity. Every movement of his hands felt like more than just technique. It was presence. It was listening. It was almost a silent dialogue between what hurt in me and what he offered in return. And I'm not just talking about the physical. There was something more there. When the session ended, I sat up slowly, as if I were leaving a sacred space. "How are you feeling?" he asked. And I, still a bit dazed from that strange lightness, replied, "Like I took a weight off, and not just from my back." He smiled, a small smile, but it stayed with me the rest of the day. I thanked him, said goodbye, and left. But inside me, something had changed. I can't quite explain. It was like a forgotten part of my body, and my heart had awakened. I didn't yet know what it was, or where it would lead, but in that quiet, respectful touch, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. I returned for the second session already knowing the way, but with a heart more restless than the first time. I thought it was just the anticipation of feeling better physically, but it wasn't just that. There was a different stir inside me, like a breeze on a still day. "Good morning, Mrs. Marianne," he said when he greeted me, with that same serene smile. But that day, his eyes lingered a second longer on mine, a second that made me blink. Differently, as if I had forgotten for a moment what it was like to be looked at like that. I lay down on the table without saying much, but my body felt more alert. It was as if every part of me was waiting for that touch, not just for relief, but as a kind of reunion. When his hands began to move along my back, the pain eased again, but this time, something else lit up. A subtle, almost shy warmth spread across my skin. It was gentle, but insistent, and it wasn't uncomfortable. On the contrary, it was like my body was remembering something old and good. At one point, he placed his hand on my shoulder, firm yet kind. He stayed there for a few seconds, in silence. I wanted to say something, but my voice got lost in the air. When he lifted his hand, he did it slowly, as if to say, "I understand," without speaking. The session went on, and I started noticing the details, the care in warming the oil before applying it, the way he adjusted the towel to keep me comfortable, the respectful silence between us. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was a silence full of presence. After the massage, when I stood up, he remained there, watching me with a soft smile. "You seem lighter today, and not just your back," he said, looking into my eyes. I smiled back, trying to balance the gratitude with whatever else was beginning to stir inside me. "Maybe I am," I replied, feeling my cheeks flush slightly. That night, while sipping my tea, I kept thinking about that moment when he touched my shoulder and stayed there, silent. Was it just part of the job, or was there something more? I started noticing other gestures, the way he held my arm to help me sit up, the way he called me Marianne, without the Mrs., with a natural ease that made me feel more alive. Am I imagining this? I wondered. But what I felt wasn't imagination. It was desire, not the urgent desire of youth, but the longing to be seen, to be touched with intention, to be desired as a whole, with wrinkles, stories, and silences. And that scared me as much as it made me smile to myself, because I still didn't know how he felt. But there, between the touch and the silence, something in me had already awakened, and I couldn't pretend it was just a massage anymore. By the fourth session, something had already shifted between us. We didn't talk about it, but it was in the air, in the way he ran his hand more gently across my back, in the delicate pause after each touch, as if he were listening to more than just my body. And I, increasingly aware of my skin, my scent, my own silences. It was strange to feel alive again, and beautiful, scary and beautiful, all at once. At the end of that session, he helped me sit up on the table as he always did, but this time, he didn't let go of my hand right away. He kept holding it, eyes locked on mine. A moment longer. I looked at him, heart pounding like a teenager. "Marianne," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Can I ask you something a bit script? Off?" I nodded, not saying a word, just feeling that warmth rise in my cheeks. "Would you let me take care of you outside this room?" he asked, and I nearly stopped breathing. My heart pounded so hard I could hear the echo in my chest. It wasn't a pickup line or anything inappropriate. There was something in his voice, a mix of care and restrained longing, like someone who respects, but also hopes. I stood there, looking at him, trying to understand what I myself was feeling. "How do you take care?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I wanted to hear it again. I wanted to know if what I was imagining was really happening. "In a different way," he replied. "Maybe dinner, a conversation with no rush, an affectionate gesture, outside work hours. Only if you want, of course." He let go of my hand, but slowly, as if leaving behind a trace of something that wouldn't fade anytime soon. And then, silence settled between us for a few seconds, and it was the loudest silence I'd ever heard. "You caught me off guard, Warren," I finally said, with a small smile. "But it's a good surprise." On the way home, my mind wouldn't stop racing. Even as I smiled inwardly, part of me screamed, "Marianne, are you sure? After all this time, do you still remember what this feels like?" And maybe I didn't. Maybe I was rusty, unsure, full of fears. But something was stronger. The longing, the desire to be cared for, to hear my name spoken with tenderness, to hold someone's hand without a... That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the moment he held my hand, the way his eyes asked for permission. And I wondered, does love, even at this age, also begin like this, with one extra touch and a simple question? Little did I know that question, asked in a quiet voice and with sincere eyes, would turn my life upside down in a way I no longer believed was possible. I put on my navy blue dress, the one with wide straps that I only wear on occasions that ask for a little extra care. I combed my hair slowly, my hands still trembling, trying more to tame my thoughts than the strands. It had been years since I got ready for someone. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and for a moment, I didn't see just a grandmother. I saw a woman. With wrinkles, yes, but also with a light in her eyes. I arrived at the restaurant with my heart pounding like a snare drum. It was a cozy place, with warm yellow lighting, small tables, and soft background music. It felt like everything there was whispering, "Relax, you can breathe." When Warren stood to greet me, I felt the world pause for a second. He wore a light-colored shirt, simple, but it made his eyes stand out. "You look beautiful, Marianne," he said in that voice that feels like a hug. I smiled, a little shy, and replied, "And you look different without the coat." We talked like old friends. We spoke about our childhoods, books, foods that bring back memories. I found out he liked listening to Etta James on Sundays, and that he baked bread at home to soothe his mind. "And you?" he asked. "What calms you, besides massages?" I laughed. Chamomile tea and silence. But lately, not even tea has done the job. Little by little, we opened up. We laughed more. We joked about the menu. We shared a dessert. But there was something more. A care in his gestures, the way he listened so attentively, how he avoided looking at his watch, how he rested his elbow on the table just to lean closer. It was like he was, saying, without words, "You matter, and I'm here." At one point, after a sip of wine, he took my hand. It wasn't a surprise. I had been waiting for that touch, but still, something inside me trembled. It was a touch without rush, without pressure, just his presence there, steady and calm. "You know, Marianne," he said, looking at me in a way I hadn't been looked at in years. "Sometimes we spend so much time just surviving, we forget that we deserve to be happy." I took a deep breath. I wanted to respond, but I couldn't. My eyes were wet, and I just squeezed his hand in return. In that moment, I realized I was being seen, not just noticed, truly seen, with my marks, my pauses, my longings. After dinner, Warren walked me home and kissed me gently on the cheek, with a look that said much more than anything spoken that night. I walked into my apartment feeling my skin still warm, as if his touch had stayed there, resting on me. I took off my shoes slowly, left my purse on the chair, and went straight to the balcony, where the ferns swayed gently in the wind. It was as if even they could feel something had changed. The next day, he sent a short message. It was a beautiful night. "Can I see you today?" My heart, which no longer startled so easily, skipped a beat. I said yes, and he arrived with a box of fresh strawberries and a light wine. "To sweeten the night and loosen the laughter," he said, walking in with that calm way of his, someone who's in no rush, but knows exactly what he's doing. We sat on the couch, side by side, with no need to say anything. There was a calm I had never experienced at the start of a relationship. No anxiety, just the desire to be there. We talked about our younger days, our fears, and what we still hoped for in life. I thought my body had shut down, I confessed, like an old radio, forgotten in a corner. But with you, it feels like it started playing again. He smiled and took my hand gently. "You never stopped being music, Marianne. You just needed someone who knew how to listen." That phrase disarmed me, and when he leaned in, it was with care. His kiss wasn't rushed or demanding. It was an invitation, and I accepted. We went to the bedroom slowly, as if every step was part of an old dance being remembered. He touched me like someone discovering sacred ground. No rush, no expectations, just deep affection, the kind that warms you inside and out. When he took off my blouse, he looked into my eyes, as if to say, "You're beautiful, right now, just like this." I felt every part of me awakened, alive, whole, not like in the movies, or the rushed romances of youth. It was different. It was more. He kissed my scars with the same tenderness he kissed my neck, held me like someone who knows that love, in maturity, is made of presence and listening. That night, our bodies spoke like old friends reunited. No shame, no hurry, no fear. There was desire, yes, but also care. There was soul. Afterward, I feeling his fingers gently run through my hair, a tenderness I hadn't felt in years. "Thank you for reminding me it's still possible," I whispered. And he replied, with a warm, low voice, "We never lose the ability to love, Marianne. We just sometimes forget where we left it." I fell asleep there, heart light, body at peace, and certain that this night had been more than just a physical encounter. It was a restart, a rebirth, and deep inside, something whispered, "Now, yes, come back." After that night, my life never returned to where it had been. It was as if something inside me had finally been unlocked, like a window that had stayed shut for years, and once opened, let the light in without asking permission. I woke up with a light body and a full heart. It wasn't just about sleeping in Warren's arms, but about feeling whole, as a woman, as a person, as someone who still has so much to live for. In the days that followed, everything felt more vivid. The smell of coffee, the wind on my face, even the rustling leaves of my ferns had a new sound. And it wasn't because I was in love, even though I was. It was because I had started to feel alive again. I, Marianne, the woman who for so long had only been a grandmother, a mother, a widow, was now rediscovering herself. And it wasn't a return to the past, but a new path, walking firmly on more honest ground. Warren didn't come to fill a void. He arrived when I was finally ready to find myself. And maybe that's what moves me most when I look back. Love in maturity has a different texture. It doesn't come with promises of forever, but with daily gestures that say, "I'm here, let's walk together." There's no longer a rush to prove anything, or a need to conquer. There's presence, there's listening, there's space. "You've changed, Mom," my daughter said one day, as we had coffee in the kitchen. I laughed. "Changed or found myself again?" I replied. She looked at me lovingly and said, "Whatever it is, you look more beautiful." I knew it wasn't about looks. It was the light in my eyes, my posture, the way I existed. I was allowing myself again. Warren and I took things slow. We saw each other often, but without hurry. Each meeting felt like a new chapter, written without fear of the ending. Sometimes we went to the movies. Other times we just walked hand in hand through the park in silence. And that silence, it no longer hurt. It was filled with peace. I realized that love has no age, but it takes on new shapes over time. It matures with us. It becomes more patient, deeper, more real. It's not the love we see in films, full of fireworks. It's a love that warms like a blanket on a cold day. It doesn't shout, it stays. After Warren, I was never the same, because I learned that love can also be a new beginning, and that pleasure, affection, desire, all of it, has no expiration date. What changes is the gaze, the way we touch, the way we listen to others, and most importantly, to ourselves. Today, if someone asks me whether it's still possible to love after 60, I'll answer with a smile full of certainty. Not only is it possible, it's essential. Because love, when it comes with calm and truth, also heals. And I'm living proof of that. If this story reminded you that there's still time to feel, to love, to begin again, then subscribe, leave your like, and share. Because sometimes, a story like this is all someone needs to not give up on themselves.